That's Marco D'Amico. Follow him at MN D'Amico. Read all his stuff on the regular, including interesting bit of information coming out over the weekend as it relates to Rick Tocchet and the Boston Bruins and Don Sweeney. Good stuff. RG Media with Marco D'Amico. Now, all in on the NHL draft as we talk about picks 16 and 17. Let's get a little bit more in the weeds. Let's get a little bit more specific on targets for the
Mhm.
Montreal Canadiens. Hopefully you watched the video, Marco breaking it down on the cost of doing business if you want to move up the draft, and don't rule out moving down the draft. And we talk about 2026 picks. Go check out that video if you haven't already. But right here, right now, let's talk about targets specifically. And as always, you can support us by supporting our sponsors at BetOnline, betonline.ag, a trusted space in the online gaming community for the better part of 2.5 decades, the easiest cash out options in the business and the best customer service going. Right now, your hockey gut says the Canadians are looking to draft at 16 and 17. Are they looking for a forward? Or are they looking for a defenseman? They're not looking for goalies. They've got goalies. What position do you think they're really taking a hard look at today?
I don't think there's a positional bias, to be honest with you.
Right.
Right? Like the players that you're going to be picking are 3 to 4 years away from even cracking your roster on a regular basis, never mind reaching their potential, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not, like even in the best case scenario, you look at a guy like Cole Caulfield. Cole Caulfield only really, like, of course, he got in the bubble and played in the playoffs for the Canadiens 2 years after being drafted, but really his rookie season was the third year after being drafted.
Okay.
So, and that's a situation where the player did so well in their development that they were able to get to that point. You look at a guy like Caden Gooley. Caden Gooley didn't really perform top four duties until 4 years after being drafted,
Hmm.
right? So that's what I'm trying to get at. So if you're the Montreal Canadiens, you're looking for fit, you're looking for value, you're looking for complementary assets that are translatable to the NHL. And so I'll give you a direct example. They were looking at guys with compete.
Okay.
There's a certain player by the name of Carter Bear who played for the Everett Silvertips. Partial, not full, partial laceration of his Achilles heel.
Hmm.
Already back on the ice, but some teams are still going to have reservations, even though his representation is saying that he is fully healed and already training on the ice, a couple of months after that kind of an injury, which is usually gruesome. But that's a player that could be available in the teens, for example, that the Canadians would be worthwhile in trading up for because he is a top 10 talent that
Right.
would fall simply just due to a lack of visibility and not seeing him in the playoffs or just overall concern for his health. If the Canadians medical team say, nah, he's fine, everything's fine. It's just, people are spooked because it's the Achilles heel, but it's completely fully healed and doesn't show any risk of re-injury,
Yeah.
then it's a no-brainer, right? You draft a top 10 talent outside of the top 10, you move for that, right? So that's the kind of player I could see the Canadians moving up for. You brought up Roger McQueen, same concept, back injury, kept him out, came
Right.
back, played very well. So those are the kinds of players that if there are fallers, I could see the Canadians trying to be aggressive and
Interesting.
moving up to get them.
What do you think those intangibles, people love to talk about intangibles, the
Yeah.
character clauses, everything else. What do we know about Jeff Gordon, Ken Hughes, and what they look for outside of what a player does on the ice? Maybe I don't want to say prioritize, but they pay attention to, someone that they want to bring in, what they do off the ice. What's their
Yeah.
relationship with family, friends, girlfriend, partners, whatever. What do you
Yeah.
think about the intangibles and how this regime factors those into making a draft choice?
Yeah. I mean, those are important aspects as well. I mean, there's the
Have they
obviously
shown us a
the
pattern, Marco, like a Slavkovsky or Lane Hudson? Has this regime shown a pattern of what they look for before pulling the trigger, you think?
Yeah, they definitely need players that are comfortable with themselves and aren't going to get caught up with the pressure.
I
I think
agreed with
that's the
that.
key,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
look at a guy like Ivan Demidov, he wants the
Yes.
pressure. He wanted the
Yes.
smoke. You look at a guy like David Reinbacher, isn't really bothered by all the noise around him, and boy, was there noise around him. You look at a guy like Yuri Slavkovsky, Uri Slafkovsky's like punishing himself in front of the media for not being good.
Yeah.
Lane Hudson constantly working, constantly proved people wrong during his very young career. So unbothered, right?
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of players that they're looking for, guys that can fit in this market and aren't flight risks, right? And I think that's the key.
Hmm.
And that's when they talk about character and compete, because in Montreal, and I think everybody can agree here, in Montreal, there is no greater judge of effort than the Montreal Canadiens fans. If
Well
you
said.
give your all, you will be repaid in full in terms of adulation and respect. And I think no greater example of that in the Montreal Canadiens lineup exists outside of Brendan Gallagher, right? Brendan Gallagher would be, how do I put this? Would be booed in certain circles because of
Right.
the salary he earns and the output he does. But because of the way he plays and the relentlessness and the constant effort and the energy that he provides, the respect remains. The same can be said about a guy like Josh Anderson. I'm not saying they're worth their contracts, but the way they play on the ice and
I
the
got
way
you.
they lay it out and the way that they compete, that is what they're looking for. Now, granted, I'm not saying the Canadiens are going to spend 16th and 17th overall picks if they do draft on third liners. It may turn out to be that way, just how the cookie crumbles with this draft.
Yeah.
But the idea is that they're looking for players with talent that also have those intangibles. And I think that's difficult because every single team in the NHL is. So it makes it a little different. But I'll flip it over to you, Shaun.
Yeah.
You have a center that has, or let's say you have a forward that has all the intangibles in the world, super clutch player, ran into a
Yeah.
little bit of injury troubles, but you're told, there's a 90% confidence interval that they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Versus, a high scoring defenseman with defensive issues that got shut out in the playoffs. Which one are you going to go for?
I'm going to go
The
with the
high
former. I'll
octane.
go with the former. I'll go with
You
the
go the former.
90%. Yes, I
Yeah, you'll
will.
go
I
with
will.
former,
When
right?
you
Because
sold me everything you said about Ethan Bear, I am green. I love those angles. As
that's a
long as
defenseman.
there's no such thing as certainty,
Yeah,
but I like the idea of, oh, this guy had a bump in the road in his path towards the NHL. Maybe there's a general manager or two that's skittish about that.
yeah,
I'm not skittish about that. I have my own experts that evaluate and tell me
yeah,
the risk is worth the reward. I
yeah,
love the idea because, again, we're not talking about a Canadians team drafting top 10. Top 10, I probably have a different answer. I'm looking for
yeah,
more certainty, but
yeah.
we're talking about a 16th, 17th overall pick here. I can roll the
Ironically,
dice, Marco.
and I like how you say that, but ironically, when you get to that point in the draft where you're picking the second half of the first round, picks tend to get safer, in fact, right?
Yes. Yes.
Teams end up going for like the third line centers or
Right. The big
the
bodies.
prototypical
Yeah.
no nonsense top four defensemen and or that end up potentially playing on a third pair. So I don't think the Canadians necessarily go for safe picks. You could probably argue that Reinbacher was viewed as a safe pick because he is a pretty safe bet to be a top four defenseman. Now, whether or not he's going to be top four or top pair, that's
Yeah.
up to him and his development. So when I look at the Canadians and I look at what they're trying to do in the teens, I think that's where you have to be aggressive. And it really depends on the draft class. But one of the key points, I think if the Canadians do pick, everybody seems to be under the impression if they pick twice, they're going to go defenseman and forward and defenseman.
Right.
That's usually fair because you don't want to load up too much on one side of a position. But the thing is the Canadians prospect pool right now, if you look at it top to bottom, is there one player in that prospect pool that is a guaranteed top six player?
No.
You can make the argument.
No, you're not counting Demidov, obviously, I assume.
No, Ivan Demidov is going to be on prospect lists for still another year because
Yeah,
he hasn't
exactly.
played. He's
Yeah.
still considered a
Yeah.
rookie, but
Like,
he's
I
off.
think Logan
He's an
Mailloux could be
NHL
top
player for me.
4. I think
Huh?
Logan Mailloux could be a top 4 defenseman.
Yeah, the thing with Logan is he's got to shore up the defense, and he's just got to keep that emotion in check. But I think with maturity, he's going to continue to get
Yeah.
there.
David Reinbacher's another top 2. I think David could be a top pairing defenseman.
Yeah, I think that Adam Engstrom has potential for a top 4 defenseman if he continues to play the way he has as well. The thing is, it's all on D.
I know, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Joshua
Yes.
Roy my 2 cents, I think Joshua
Oh,
Roy
this
is
poor
trade
guy.
fodder this
This
summer,
poor guy.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Owen Beck is going to be an elite bottom six player.
Agreed.
I think
Jared
Florian
Davidson.
Xhekaj is going to be a great crusher
Yeah.
bottom six player as well.
Yeah.
But beyond that, maybe Jared Davidson as well, kind of squeak himself into a fourth line
That's
role
it.
as well.
Yeah.
But no top of the lineup players at
Agreed.
forward outside
Agreed.
of potentially Michael Hage. So who's to say they don't go for two forwards?
Yes.
Who's to
Yes.
say they don't trade up for one forward that's more of a skill compete guy and then draft at 17 a
Yes.
guy that's more physical that will complement a third line but can move up the lineup.
Yes.
And one of the guys that I was thinking about that kind of fit that role is a Lyndon Lakovich, who
Oh,
plays
yeah.
for the
So I
Montreal
wanted, yes,
Warriors.
I wanted to ask you about him.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I spoke to him last week. There should be an interview coming out with RG shortly.
6'4"
Um,
left winger, this big boy here.
exactly, and you
Yeah.
look at his point totals. Don't scream, scoring winger, but you have to watch this guy play. You have to factor in everybody. When a draft eligible player plays on a junior team that won the title, in his case, the Moose Jaw Warriors won the WHL title last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their roster got raided. Everybody left. Denton Matejchuk off to Columbus, or the Cleveland Monsters. Jagger Furcus off to Seattle or Coachella. You lose a guy like I think they lost Jaeger last year as well. They lost tons of players, and so Lakovich missed some time with a broken collarbone and then was eventually suspended for
Right.
some off ice stuff, but nothing crazy. And still led his team in scoring by like double digit points. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the output, that size, that skill, that Logan Thompson-esque style of play, there's a little bit of risk in his game. You're not going to get a perfect player in the teams like that.
No.
But that's the kind of power forward that the Canadiens would need. And because of his size and speed, the chances that he's able to have an impact in the pros quicker than the smaller player are higher.
Yes.
And so that may make him an ideal player for the Canadiens at 16 and 17 if available. I'm not going to give away what I know about the situation, but if he's available when the Canadiens pick at 16 or 17, or if they feel they need to trade up for him, that's a player the Canadiens have identified.
Right. Yeah, and there's some big bodies like out of the U.S. national program too. William Moore comes to mind that comes out of that program. Jack Murtaugh's another one, another
Jack
winger there
Murtaugh,
coming out of the U.S. program. Cole
Monty
McKinney
Spence.
is another one. So
The
there's
other,
big bodied U.S. players that Jeff Gordon and Ken Hughes. Can we say they know quite a bit about these guys coming out of the U.S. national program?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very plugged in that regard. But I think, you look at the Montreal Canadiens; they've been very active in the WHL this year. WHL is
Right.
a very, very good class of players.
Whoa.
The
Yeah.
OHL dominates the top. Like you got to give it to the OHL.
Yeah, for
But then
sure.
the WHL, you got guys like Carter Bear, Roger McQueen,
Yeah.
Jackson Smith. You're looking at um,
You think they're looking at Ben
one,
Kindell there? A small guy though, no?
yeah,
Calgary Hitmen.
one guy, a couple of guys that are on we're gonna call them small, but
Yeah.
when a player is 5'11" and 180 to 185 pounds
It's
at
thick.
17 years old,
Thick.
they're
Yeah.
not small.
No.
They're gonna fill out at like 190, 195 at 5'11".
Yeah.
I mean, geez, man, like it's not. I don't consider that small.
You
But
talk
if
about
you have elite skill,
Cole Reshny guy? Is that Cole Reshny?
Cole Reshny,
Yeah.
Braden Coots, again, WHL guys, right? You look at how well they played for their respective teams. Like Cole Reshny was the offensive player for his club, right? Like it's really evident how he led that team as a 17-year-old in scoring. Despite having
Mm.
a couple of older guys on that team, he was the guy, and he looked so good for Team Canada as well. And then you have Coots as well, who had a fantastic U18. And
Yeah.
again, like this is why I think there could be a mix and match situation where the Canadiens, for example, if they can't get a guy like Carter Bear, if they can't trade up for a guy like Roger McQueen, if their guys are gone, I could see a combination where the Canadiens pick a really skilled forward and a real power forward
Mm.
because it's as they said, we need a mix. It's not just size. We need compete, and it
Yeah.
comes in all sizes.
Yeah.
You need to make sure you have the right mix. So if you have a guy like Reshny projects as a potential top 6 talent. And if he continues to grow into his body,
Oof.
5'11", 6 foot, 190 pounds,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
league
Yeah.
average.
Yeah. Apologies. I believe I mentioned Ethan Bear. I'm
Yeah,
obviously
Carter
not.
Bear.
Yeah. Yeah. Carter Bear. I'm not talking about Ethan Bear, obviously. Marco, great stuff as always. I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being a loyal supporter. Like, subscribe, support us by supporting our sponsors at betonline.ag, a trusted space in the online gaming community for the better part of 30 years. Marco, thank you so much, and looking forward to what's on tap when we reconvene in a week's time with a whole new batch of stuff, because there is no off season. Marco, thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure, guys. Enjoy.